One apple a day keeps the medic away!
I can't stress enough just how impressive the Mug team, now officially Sidetrack Games, are. Within a matter of months since first tackling the beast of monstrous spaghetti code that is Payday 2, they've already addressed dozens of issues which have plagued the games without reprieve for the best part of a decade. Not just that though, they've breached a division so unbelievably vast after all these years. Wolf finally has updated lines, delivered by the one and only Ulf Andersson himself. Already, after the first smaller patch they released in November fixed a number of more immediately pressing bugs, such as the Akimbo SMG crash, it was evident they had the talent to improve Payday 2. They've now turned in Update 2.4.2, addressing things like hostage pathing and, yep, officially implementing new Wolf voice lines. Let me reiterate, there's 3 of them on this team. This is what a combination of focus, expertise, and drive looks like in practice. Just testament to their evident talents and what can be achieved when all the red tape and overcautious habits are wiped clean. Today, as we near the end of 2025, I'm delighted to bring you Update 2.4.2 for Payday 2, rebalancing cop spawns to 2023 levels, fixing unintended features I've been abusing for years, and rebalancing the functionality of medics, resulting in a much more rounded experience once again. I'm going to start by running you through each of the core patch notes that you might come across when playing the game casually, starting with a really overdue alteration to how Akimbo skins work. Now, any weapon that has an Akimbo version will share its skins across the individual and dual-wielded variants. This massively expands the roster of Akimbo skins and brings some of the cooler options in the game to their standard secondary slot. Somehow, as I'm reading this, I suspect the pricing of the Anarcho Judge skin might have just gone up, now we're able to dual-wield these monsters. This is the sort of baseline you can expect in terms of Sidetrack's adjustments. Logical and steady improvements to the already existing systems that'll make you say, why hasn't it always worked like this? Along those same lines, finally a decade after their addition to the game, the most Marmite of all special units, the medics, are receiving a much requested change. After this patch, both the standard red units and Death Sentence exclusive medic bulldozers will no longer be able to heal each other, preventing those chain revives that can be so frustrating for most builds to handle. This is the first of a few tweaks to the game intended to passively expand the viable weapon pool, as it was always the lower DPS potential setups that struggle with these guys consistently, Ouroborosing their way through the heist, genuinely damage gating certain builds on higher difficulties via their gargantuan self-regenerating health pools. Again, a simple adjustment that you might not even feel at first, but is an unarguable improvement on the previous status quo. Additionally, enemy group spawn cooldowns have been reverted back to 15 to 20 seconds as was originally intended. Hopefully this will avoid spawns cascading on certain heists like Black Cat, where their potential spawn locations are more limited. The macro impact of this is that heists will be flooded at a much slower rate than after the infamous update 2.40.3, which warped the meta to make it so only ludicrously high damage builds were viable, amongst a number of other unpopular changes. Now, spawns will be much more reasonable again, meaning waves ramp as intended, and you're properly rewarded for controlling spawn points instead of the genset baby factory pumping them out 10 to the dozen. This will warp how playing the game feels, returning to a previous point of horde shooter balance, although from the few heists I was able to play before going live, the overall feel of the game hasn't been drastically impacted. Maybe this is just because I was playing solo, but there's still plenty of chaos to go around, with overall high spawn caps still untouched. The best way I can visualize the change for you though is to showcase this gameplay from an upcoming challenge run on Henry's Rock, where despite only playing on Overkill, the heist is flooded almost instantly at the escape, compared to this clip recorded post-patch on Death Wish. It's still frantic, but that little bit more manageable. My take on this is that it places the game in a much more balanceable spot, putting the Sidetrack team in a better place to make further adjustments to the meta, as we'll see from a few bug fix nerfs coming up. One of the most impactful changes though has to be the total restructuring of how hostage moving functions. Everything from their pathing to response time has been vastly improved upon. It'll make crew chief builds much better to play, and most importantly, make stealth hostage management actually feasible. I'm positive this change alone will save millions of Civ lives, as we no longer need to blast them into Kingdom Come with the Judge in order to quickly get them out of line of sight. Saving on body bags and really functioning as the Civ system for Payday 2 was initially envisioned all those years ago. This is something that's frankly needed fixing ever since launch, and we've just gotten used to working around their incompetence instead. That's why it's such a statement improvement to the game's logic from the crew currently developing Payday 2, akin to what only mods could achieve in the past. It's weird because this is a small tweak in the grand scheme of things, but what it means for the game goes far beyond its tangible usage. This is a marker in the sand, showcasing the depth of Sidetrack's ambitions for the game, improving systems we've just come to accept as fundamentally broken 12 years in the past. Speaking of just accepting things in the game, no matter how inexplicable they are, the team have gone back and reverted a widely hated change to how shotguns function with the shotgun or ace skill, allowing them to knock back shields. Now, since it applies on each pellet again, the skill grants almost guaranteed knockback for any shotgun wielder, which feels right. I think this is a positive reversion, bearing in mind so many people have adapted to it by simply defaulting to the shield penetrating Dragon's Breath rounds again. Now you can specialise in a more pure shotgun playstyle without being heavily shut down by shield units. At the same time, not every adjustment or fix falls in the player's favour. Bulletstorm is finally being nerfed, or actually fixed, so that it no longer grants you 60 seconds worth of bottomless ammo when you empty your bag. It's instead capped at 20 seconds, pretty close to the max intended by the skill's design. This is probably a sensible move, nerfing some of the least interactive setups in the game, such as Bulletstorm Commando 101s. Again, on paper this might make the game a little harder, but with fewer spawns on each heist, we don't need to be as broken as before, and this simply brings a somewhat degenerate strategy in line with other playstyles. Similarly, they've fixed my glorious crew AI Akron bug, something I've leveraged a ton in past videos to trivialise death sentence at times. Now, instead of the bot wielding a fully auto sniper rifle dealing over 200 damage per shot, it's been brought back down in line with the other LMGs they can wield. To be clear, it's still pretty damn good, you just can't expect your crew to manhandle dozers as they could in the past. In truth, this AI tech was another coping mechanism for me on certain builds when the spawns got out of hand. With things being pulled back on that front, it's unlikely we'll require the bots to do quite so much of the heavy lifting, putting the power back into the player's hands, as much as I will miss abusing this little oversight. This is all in line with the general approach I've seen from these guys, reining in the game to a more balanceable state while stripping away some of the broken methods we used to level the playing field in the past. My hope, and I assume theirs, is that the game ends up feeling more consistent to play across all levels of play, experience, and difficulty. In other words, a more rounded experience from which they can consider developing things outward instead of just tidying up the mess they've been left with. On the topic of spicy messes, most of you will be aware of Ulf Anderson, an Overkill OG and original voice of Wolf, having quite the fallout with ex-Starbreeze CEO Bo, his brother, leading to him leaving the studio back around 2014 to 2015, resulting in Wolf receiving no new voice lines until he was officially replaced by Nicholas Berglund for Payday 3, who did a great job of making the character his own in my opinion. However, that still left Payday 2's Wolf without key voice lines for medics and SWAT van turrets, as they were added to the game after his departure, and the best the audio team at the time could muster was splicing together medic bag lines from launch. Now, I don't believe it would have been appropriate for Berglund to re-record Ulf's original lines, so assumed he'd remain voiceless for all time within Payday 2, especially now he's all in on work towards releasing Den of Wolves sometime within the next 1 or 2 decades. Anyway, turns out he was a man of his word earlier this year in Stockholm when he mentioned to creators present he'd likely be willing to fill in those lines if they could get it past the legal department. As with Sidetrack taking over the development of Payday 2, this was the degree of separation needed to finally get it done. Ulf hasn't done this for his brother or even Starbreeze, a competitor in the genre. No, it was for a group of passionate fans and the wider community of Payday at large. A massive show of good faith from the big man himself, who I've personally witnessed is insanely busy with Den of Wolves at the moment, all release date jokes aside. In total, the update includes multiple lines for calling out and killing medics, some of which only occurring quite rarely, as well as marking SWAT turrets for the team, rounding off his voice lines to be at least comparable with the heisters who release later in the game's lifecycle.
Medic down!
Alright, who's got a boo-boo?
Now stop!
Stand clear.
Took care of the medic!
I must confess that a little quiet at the moment, especially when in the heat of combat, but the team's aware of that fact and will be turning up the volume in an update early next year. Regardless, I can't stress enough just how big of a deal this is. This is a historic division in Payday's history, a reminder of how things ended up the way they did, with a number of Starbreeze and Overkill vets leaving to join 10 Chambers. It's been buried in layers of speculation and ludicrous rumours of ruptured vocal cords, an issue I thought was so far gone it was beyond repair. But here we are, coming to the end of 2025, with Ulf giving his all in the VA booth once again, with some genuinely fantastic lines. Lots of players don't play as Wolf, and even of those who do, many won't even understand the history of these old truncated voice lines that sounded a little off. But I can't stress enough just how significant a get this actually is. That's not all this update features though, with, as it was described to me, a little Christmas gift for players of all interests. Stealth, loud, modding, custom heist creation, Clover. Yes, they have attempted to fix the buggiest hair in the game. The scope is impressively broad, and whilst the game doesn't feel significantly different to play at first glance, these are all small steps towards a large leap in the right direction for Payday 2 fans. Exactly what we were hoping the Sidetrack team would bring. Acute issues players have had with the game for years that fell on deaf ears previously are now being addressed, with the kind of razor-sharp focus that leaves you wondering, what else are these guys capable of? My feeling after playtesting this for the past week or so is that Sidetrack's ambition should be to take this as far as they can go. Clearly, if they're capable of this much in such little time, there's nothing stopping them from taking things further next year once this becomes their full-time endeavour, as was stated in the first update's announcement stream. Already, they're making some moves I've written off as impossible. Let's see what 2026 has in store. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Let me know what you're excited to try out when you load up Payday 2 this week. And of course, if you're still looking for a way to bring in the new year with style, look no further than Apex Gaming PC's website, where you can pick up their premium Payday builds from the link in the description. Take care, see you soon in the next video. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.